want to follow back up on what you were saying previously, so I'm sorry, I'm going to rewind a little bit, but, I mean, we asked you, is there an assurance you can give us, and you said, well, if there had been some language, you know, I would have given, but, so why was the ballot written in a way that it's not committed to the safer grant firefighters? The language in the ballot says that we're voting for payment for the civic center and equipment for public safety and fire services, but it doesn't specifically say that we're going to keep those 3 firefighters.
Elliot says public safety services.
Right. So again, why did we not see the 3 safer firefighters when that's how we worked the math to get to the $300,000?
I will have to follow up with you on that, because I remember going round and round with the attorney, and if there's anyone here that was a part of that, maybe Penny, you may have some insider recollection on this, or Chief, but I remember the attorneys were very guarded on, we couldn't mention the word safer and the grant, and then the firefighters there was a point of contention along the very specific language. And the other part of it was, what I shared with all of you today about us messing up previous levies, it's not like I never said that to the staff. And so they felt a little pressure to try to use language that was right and accurate and wouldn't get us into trouble. And the more precise that you get, the more room for error there is. And so I don't know what the specific reasoning is, but I know that as you do ratchet it down, there were legal issues with getting that specific, even though that is the intent. But I'll follow up with you and find out what they're...
And I do have a second follow-up. You know, you mentioned, well, what if years from now we have extra money, how do we spend it? This is very telling to me, because right away the reaction is, you know, one of the city council members, at least at one point, made the statement that, you know, if we end up having more money than we need, we're asking for this 97.5 cents, but if we end up having more money than we need, we don't have to use it all, giving us the impression that they're not going to use it all if they don't need it. But of course, your reaction now is, if more money comes in, how do we spend it? So if you flip that page back, and if we look at the numbers we have, which is the 770 and the 300, well, congratulations, Mayor, you have more money to spend. We know that the 770 is based on the assumption that we have 0 REET coming in. And while, yes, we're in an economic crisis, and yes, REET has dropped off, it used to be close to $1 million a year, that's how we used to pay the debt. REET is not 0, so we actually know that money is going to come in, and I think in the last year it was about $300,000. So there is, this levy will provide with extra money, and again, how do we know that City Council is going to be responsible and not use up the 97.5 cents when we lumped everything together in one ballot initiative in the general fund?
That's a good question. The reason that was very important for me to, what I would say, replace the REET with a stable fund source is because it is volatile. It's variable. It changes, it fluctuates. And I think right now the projection is around $150,000 for it to come in. And it can be used for very specific purposes. And right now, what I needed to do is to get out of that variable, volatile revenue source that was utilized earlier, that is not reliable, and replace it with a stable one. And so, to me, I looked at what the shortfall is, and made that investment in that calculation. And for those other REET dollars, you know, those will be utilized for purposes that are appropriate for them.
But the only appropriate purpose is paying for capital facilities, which means they will go to the debt, which means that out of the 770 that is thrown in the general fund, 150 won't be needed anymore for debt service. So again, what is going to...
Maybe. It can go to debt. And it can go to capital. And there are other uses. The thing you have to remember is, from my perspective, in priority order, we need to make this payment, and if there's revenue, right, we need to preserve these 3 firefighters that we're going to lose. We also have to pay off the debt, and Councilmember Westman asked this at a council meeting. He goes, "This is all great to talk about maintaining things the way they are, but how are we going to pay back the money that the council has decided to borrow?"
Does the city charter require what's the reserve that we're supposed to keep in our reserve account?
The council, go ahead, ma'am.
We carry 10% ending fund balance in our general fund.
Okay.
That is what we've always done. We used.
And that's a policy, I believe.
Right,
It's not
that's
just
a
a
policy
habit.
decision that the council made, that we have a 10% ending fund balance. Plus, there's other designated money, but remember, we used, by the end of this year, I think it will be close to $2 million out of our equipment repair and replacement fund, which is general fund money that each department has to pay into that account, so that when their equipment wears out, there's money there to replace. If a police car wears out after 7 years or 9 years, there's money sitting there to replace it. That's where we have been taking the money to make the payments. And so that fund is basically depleted and it needs to be replaced. So I will guarantee you that this money will go to where it is supposed to, where the ballot title says it's supposed to go. If REET money comes in, there's this equipment repair and replacement fund that needs to be rebuilt by all of these departments. So there is not an excess amount of money sitting there that is just going to be spent on someone's special project.
When you borrowed it, did you say you were going to pay it back? It's a follow-up on that, sorry.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
When you borrowed from the vehicle replacement fund, when you borrowed it in November of last year, did you say you were going to replace it?
When the extra money came in to replace it. It's all in a line item in the budget where it is transferred. It's very, I mean, you can follow it. It went from here to here. And when the money comes in, when we start getting more revenue into the city, that equipment repair and replacement fund will be rebuilt. It has to be.
One of the things that I think is important, Ellie, is that the decisions that council has made, and I was on council when one of these decisions was made, to borrow from our funds, to borrow from our savings, to borrow from our reserves, it's not smart. It's not sustainable. We all know that we should have, I mean, what do they tell us now in our personal lives, right? We should have 3 and 6 months reserves or whatever it is. And so we need to build those back up. But to me, as of right now, as revenue comes in, and there is going to be money that's going to come in, and there's money that's going to go out, and things are going to change as the economy does. And what is important is that we have these conversations to say, here's the status of our funds. Here's our reserve accounts. Here's now, in our new practice, a proposal for the mayor. And the citizens can push back on me and say, no, I do not think that extra money that came in from REET should be going to replenish the reserve account. We can have that conversation. And you can push back on the council that'll eventually make that decision and provide your input on what it is. But the key thing is, we have to make this payment on the Civic Center, and we have to make this payment for, if we get this ballot passed, we have to fund those firefighters. Because that's what we asked the community to invest in. And we need to be transparent in reporting what the return on that investment is. And if more money comes in, at that point, there is a decision, there is an option that we have to figure out what we do with that money. But it needs to be transparent in having a conversation that says, what do we do with it? And you will always get a proposal from me that says, let's, on one option, could be every year we could lower the amount of the property tax that we increase. If we see things on a trajectory that are going to come in for a year, that we're going to have a lot of revenue coming in, we can simply lower the amount of the property tax that we take that year. That's one option.
Who gets to make that decision, you or the city council?
The city council. And the other thing is, there could be a crisis that we need to invest in, and maybe one year we actually have more revenue coming in and a crisis that we need to address. That's again a community conversation of, Do we want to invest in offsetting that crisis? I don't know what's going to happen. But I can tell you that from my perspective, the commitment and the obligation to consistent reporting and community conversations about where we invest our dollar are first and foremost from what we're asking for to make that payment in the Civic Center and to those 3 firefighters. And we have to be responsible, try to pay back our reserves and build up our savings as much as possible in case something happens. And you will always get a proposal from me, and we can always have a community conversation about it.